Welcome to Every Child Belongs. I'm Kim Botto, an adoptive mom, grandma, an advocate for kids and teens with disabilities, as well as a longtime leader of kids in student ministries. In this show, we explore how we can create spaces where every child feels heard and valued, whether neurodivergent, differently abled, or they've experienced trauma. Every child belongs. We'll hear from educators, parents, professionals, and more, finding practical ideas that help build a compassionate and supportive world for every child. Let's get started. Today, we have my friend, Daniela Coates, who I met a couple years ago at a conference, and she calls herself a bio kid because she lived in a family that had foster kids. And Daniela, I just want to tell you that you were so encouraging to me as I considered my own bio kids living in a home with kids who joined our home through adoption. But Daniela is a licensed clinical social worker in Texas, the big, gigantic city of, what do you call it, Dallas-Fort Worth area? Are you in Dallas?
Right, I'm in the Metroplex, yes.
Okay. Big, gigantic area. She's also the founder of With Siblings. And this is an organization that supports the birth children in foster and adoptive homes. And you have lived it as a child, and you are now experiencing it as a parent. She also does all kinds of trainings and conferences, and she wrote a beautiful children's book, The Day Lily Turned Uninvisible. And it's written particularly with bio kids in mind. So Daniela, we're so happy to have you on here today. What did I not say that you would like our listeners to know about you?
I would just highlight the things that I'm a bio kid, right? I grew up with foster siblings, and I'm still a bio kid because I have an adopted sister. So that label doesn't go away, even though I'm an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And then I am a parent to kids by both birth and adoption. And then, work with all kids of all backgrounds, but particularly bio kids as a therapist at a practice here in the area as well.
Yeah, and I want to say, until I met you and talked to you, I've been in the adoption foster world for a long time. Next to nothing is said about bio kids. We're told to include them in some conversations. But so tell me, why are you, obviously you've lived it, but what experiences did you have that made you so passionate that you actually created an organization to help bio kids?
Yeah, well, that's a long story, but I'll give the short version, right?
Okay.
The short version is growing up, when my parents started fostering, really, actually, the plan was for us to do a straight adoption through foster care when we started. That was actually the goal. But my parents didn't know anything about how it was going to impact us. And all of us, myself and my parents included, were blindsided when those first set of kids moved into our home, and the emotions that we felt and the things that were shocking. And let's not also forget that 20 years ago, our understanding in general of trauma was not what it is today.
Right.
So not only did they weren't really fully prepared for the things that the kids coming into our home were going to be dealing with, but they definitely weren't prepared on what to expect for us and how to even know how to navigate that. And then that trickles into our community, our church not knowing. And so there's just a variety of different places that I experienced this invisibility or just these challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And so now as a professional, or I worked at a foster care adoption agency for a couple of years, and I started a support group because I knew growing up, I didn't know anybody who had a family like mine. And so I felt very lonely in that as well. And so I see myself as just trying to fill the gaps. I'm not going to be able to fill every gap, and I can't do everything either. So I know it's going to take systemic change, but I figure if we can start talking about it more, make it less of a taboo topic, then hopefully we'll start seeing more changes across the board, and families in general will be more supported so they can continue then caring for kids in those temporary capacities.
Yes. And you're helping to raise awareness. And you just said that you experienced invisibility.
Mm-hmm.
As a kid, what did that feel like?
Yeah. Well, little things like at home, which you may have heard me say some of these things before, like things like, my dad would be coming home from work and I'd be running to greet him, but so would these new kids. And so I just didn't feel like I had the same role anymore. Like, who am I if I'm not the only daughter? Or who am I if, so there's some of that. But I'll say my parents were very intentional to try to keep as many things the same as they could. I was actually homeschooled at the time. So as far as time from them, a lot of that didn't change because the kiddos were going to public school. I was homeschooled. And so some of that was able to remain the same. But then also in our church, I experienced a lot of invisibility because I was a PK. And I assume you kind of know.
Well, and let's say for those who don't know,
Yeah.
a PK is a preacher's kid. So your father was the preacher at the church?
Yeah, he was the children's pastor, and then he eventually was the family pastor.
Okay.
And so what that means is I had a lot of privileges, and I don't say that in a negative way. I loved my church, and I felt at home in my church. What that means, though, is people knew me. People appreciated me. People, I lived my life there. I was born there, raised there. And so when these set of kids came into our house, people are so excited, and I'm excited. I'm introducing them to them and all these things. But then it turns out that, we're, all standing together as a family, and people would come up and say hi to not me, but they would greet the other kids in the family and then not say anything to me at all. Or when I would express frustration to family friends, they would not be able to see the feelings I was experiencing, but instead they would, tell my dad about how disappointed they were in, how I was expressing this hard stuff to them. And so I just learned real quick that I couldn't be seen for who I really was or how I felt at that time. And so there was this invisibility, and maybe some of it's chosen and maybe some of it's not chosen. But that's a short version of kind of that invisibility and how I experienced it.
Yeah. So this whole podcast is we want every child to belong, including kids, bio kids who are living in families with children who are coming in a different way other than biologically. So you mentioned one thing churches can do is just make sure, okay, when the new kid come, absolutely greet them, but don't forget about the kids who've been around for a while.
Right.
What about as you share your hard stories? What do you wish people had done as you shared frustrations about what was going on in your family?
Yeah, well, I mean, as people, sometimes we get in the mind of set of like, I need to fix something, like something here needs to be fixed. And so I think that's a lot of what I received is more of that. Like, oh, well, they've experienced a hard time, or, instead of that sounds really hard, or yeah, you have had a lot of things change in your family. And so I can remember there is one particular family that I remember they had us over, and I think it was like the girls and the boys or something. A couple of families split and had us so my parents could have a night. But I don't remember what they said. I don't remember in particular necessarily what they did, but there was this one couple who I know they have nieces and nephews. Now I know they have nieces and nephews that are adopted. I just felt safe with them. I don't remember the specifics I said, but I can remember this. I can say what I need to say, and there was no counteracting, no bounce back of why I shouldn't feel that. And so it really doesn't have to be complicated. It really can just be let them say the thing and acknowledge the feelings. And it doesn't have to be more than that. We don't have to fix it. Just let it be okay that they're feeling that way.
Isn't that true, though, that we so often make it so complicated? So really, you're telling us just practice some good reflective listening.
Right.
Listen to what the child is saying and then repeat back what we think that they're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
What other things could help birth kids in families? What other things do you wish that more people knew?
Yeah, well, when I actually think of my family now as a parent, I have a couple of birth kids, but I also have adopted kiddos who maybe don't have as many intense challenges or, heightened behaviors as maybe some of my other kiddos. And so that means that sometimes they fall into the role of what we would sometimes call bio kids. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not speaking for people who are adopted. I stay very much in my lane.
Right.
But I have seen where if a kiddo is maybe having some challenges and maybe they're sitting with parents, maybe they're sitting with me because we feel like that's the best option, then the other sibling is trying to navigate, well, how do I tell the leader why this sibling isn't in here today or why they're, whatever it might be. And so we've seen our own kids have to navigate when there's not a sibling there. The leaders will often say, hey, let's pray for that sibling. And I think that's so powerful and beautiful. And even just the acknowledgement that there is tough stuff that's happening, because there have been times where we'll have a really rough morning at home and then we get there and then what? How do they can they say the thing? Can they not say the thing? And so there's just a lot of tension, and our kids are always welcomed with this understanding, and the children's leaders at our church know the background for us. But that also means that they had to make themselves a safe place that we could share the hard stuff going on in our home, so that they could then be receptive of the things that our kids are experiencing. So even just a knowledge and a willingness to pray for the kids, to hear that, oh yeah, something about this is not going as smoothly or as easily as, you may want it to be. And then just being willing to hear that has just been really helpful for our family too, just to know that they know, and there's no judgment there. They're just here to support us and to love on our kids.
Right. Well, as you're talking about the kid coming in and sharing, being open and vulnerable, one thing with adoptive and foster parents, we talk a lot about protecting the kid's story.
Right.
How does that play into a bio sibling who has a child who's come into the house that maybe has a really, really hard story and they know parts of it? Is there any coaching or guidance we give them in how to share their adoptive or foster sibling's story?
Yes, we need to guide them, and we shouldn't leave it to them to, we shouldn't assume that they know all the ways to talk about this hard thing. And so there is this balance of, okay, I need to give them the information that's developmentally appropriate for them, but I also need to tell them how much of this can be shared. But another thing that we've come up against in our own family too is, okay, well, as far as the person's story, that should be pretty well protected. But as far as my experience, that should be more or less fair game.
Yes.
I don't mean let's go badmouth, and share all the things that this kiddo has done this week. But if I was scared yesterday because of a behavior, or if I, was crying because, I don't know, whatever, I should be able to share that without, oh, well, you shouldn't have shared that because you're talking about the sibling. Because we have to be able to be honest about whatever it is, even if it involves the kiddo, if it's not their story. But you're right, the story piece, yes, we need to talk to them about what's appropriate and what settings, how would you like it if something was shared about you? And so we can help them to understand that from, an empathetic perspective. But there is this line of what's their story and what is me sharing my experience of being their sibling. And those are two different things.
Do you practice with them?
Yeah, certainly. You could practice with them. We all know that you can't just tell them this is how you do it and then expect it to happen. And so in the, calm times, practicing it, going over those things, but also just realizing that they're not probably going to memorize those scripts. So just giving them little words. I like to do things even as a parent, if someone asks me about a sibling, and instead of giving all the information, I might say something like, well, that's their story to tell. And so we can even give them short liners like that if we really just feel like it. But a good rule of thumb is that the older our kids are, the more questions they're going to get about the siblings. Because generally speaking, younger kids aren't going to be like, well, you have a new kid with you today. That's kind of weird. What's going on? Where do they come from? I mean, they might, but they're not going to dig as deep. It's going to be more surface level.
Right.
But the teenagers or maybe the, older elementary, they're going to start, well, where's their real mom? Or, what happened to them? And so they're going to start using those words. And that's where I'll talk with parents too. We can help our kids to even reframe the things people are saying. If they say real mom or whatever, we might say, well, their birth mom, or whatever phrase that we're helping our kids to kind of delineate with. We can help them to then educate their peers as well. So it's really an opportunity for everyone across the board to grow in their language and in their understanding of kiddos from, a variety of different backgrounds.
Yeah. And I think it's such a great idea to give just a short script like that. Not my story to tell.
Yep.
It empowers your kid. You're giving them control over the conversation. So I know you work with a lot of churches. What are the main things that the churches need to know about the bio kids, but also the whole family? How do we make them? Because if there are certain people in the family that don't feel like they belong,
right,
then very often the whole family quits attending.
Right. Yeah. Well, I would just circle back to the same things of being able to see the family for each individual person. Sometimes, a church will have a support group for foster adoptive parents, which is amazing and it's incredible. And maybe they've even got childcare for the other kiddos. But is there anyone who's able to give the bio kids a break? do they need it too? And so there's always going to be gaps, right? And no matter what system, there's always going to be a gap. But those are the kinds of things with churches that where can we support the whole family? Where if we're doing an angel tree at Christmas time and we've got kiddos who are in care on that tree, could we ask the whole foster family, hey, what are the other kids in your home? What would they like? Can we add them on the tree too? And so there's just these little pockets of things that really don't take that much time. And if you're asking your faith community, your people in your church to get an angel off the tree, they're going to grab for the bio kids too. And so what a blessing that then the whole family feels seen and loved on. And it's not that, oh, it has to be fair and it has to be equal. That's not what I'm saying, but it goes a really long way to be seen. And that goes for parents too. So we could even include we have got an angel tree, but then maybe we get a gift card for the parents and they don't know it's coming, but we give a $25 gift card so they can go to dinner or something like that. And so just going above and beyond to meet them in a way that maybe is unexpected, but is needed so they can feel seen.
Yes, those are all great ideas because I've heard so many stories. Well, even with our own kids, when our adopted daughters came home, they were showered with gifts.
Mm-hmm.
Showered with gifts, which we're thrilled.
Yep.
But it does, you see the bio kids kind of standing in the background, smiling, but feeling, as you said, and as Lily felt, invisible.
Uh-huh.
I like to talk about how people do it right, but I also think it's helpful to say, okay, how do we do it wrong so that we can identify those things and correct it? So in the church, how have you seen us do it wrong and how might we correct it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the biggest thing is if we don't have any kind of knowledge of foster care and adoption at all. That's how we do it wrong in the first place, right? If our church doesn't have any people who have foster adopted, or if they do, and then we don't know anything about it, and we don't know how to support them, we don't know anything about trauma, that's how we do it wrong. And that's a very broad, but that's how we do it wrong in a big sense. But then in the little sense, things like not having like a welcoming area where we can be able to accept that there are some kiddos who are going to have a hard time. And then there are some kids who just, maybe they need a break because they've had a hard week with a sibling. And so those are things that I think we do wrong when we're not seeing and meeting that each family has these individual needs and each kid may have had a different challenge during the week for different reasons. And with this topic of siblings, I know, Kim, that this goes a little bit outreach of the bio kids, but a lot of the experiences of bio kids are the same as siblings who have a sibling with any kind of need.
Yes.
And so that's part of my heart too, is just any of the siblings that might feel invisible, not just bio kids. And so that's another place I think we get it wrong sometimes, is we have a ministry for a particular individual or someone with a particular background, but we miss the people who maybe don't fit into that category, but yet they're in a different category. I even think of it, this is honestly a kind of a bad example, but I think of like Al-Anon, right? We've got these different organizations that, we can meet the needs of the people who are maybe part of that family system. And so sometimes, though, in the church, we don't meet the whole family system. And so we need to do a better job of that.
Those are great ideas. One thing I see is churches who have a kid. I'm glad you introduced, these principles apply to a sibling with any kind of unique needs, a kid who's not typical. But I will see them go, so you've got the child who's not typical, who maybe has a need at church or even at school. I've seen it done. And so they go and get the typical kid or the bio kid to come in and calm. And I would love to know your thoughts on that, Daniela.
I do not love that. We see in the research that there's a lot of parentification with bio kids or, the other sibling, because it is their role often in the family. They do often take on the role of like a second or a third parent. And while there is probably there is a lot of healthiness to the nurture that older siblings or other siblings give. I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all. We want our kids to have empathy for each other and to be able to care for each other and those sorts of things. But when it becomes the responsibility of the other siblings in the home, that means we've gone too far. And so I would definitely say that's a place where either the parents need to be, if the the ministry workers don't feel like they can meet the needs of the child, then that's where they reach out to the parents. But those kids should never have to take the responsibility of that, because then they don't get the opportunity to participate in whatever activities are happening at church either. So I'm a big no to that as much as it can be avoided.
I am a big no too. However, I see it done so many times.
Yeah.
And so what I will hear is leaders will say, oh, but it allows them to serve their sibling. It allows them to care for their sibling.
I mean, it does. We just don't want that to be something they have to do, right? Where if they don't do it, the family system's going to fall apart. Or if they don't do it, then their sibling won't be able to stay in, back in the children's ministry or whatever. We don't want it to ever be that the kids feel the responsibility for their sibling to ensure that those siblings' needs are met, because they're just not responsible for it. I will say another thing too is with my own kiddos, I just this week, one of them, they're at camp this week, hosted at our church. So one of them was telling me, they came home and they said, so-and-so was like all over their teacher, and they kept coming over to me and they're like, it was so embarrassing, and they were touching their teacher's eyes. And I said, honey, their teacher knows the things that are hard for them. I said, so you don't have to be embarrassed. You can be embarrassed. It's okay to be embarrassed. And also, it's not your responsibility to control that sibling's behavior. So they know.
Mm-hmm.
They know. They understand why those things are hard. And so even just being able to say to those siblings, yes, we've done our part as parents. We've let them know the challenges. And so they're not a reflection of you. You don't need to take that on yourself. And so I think that's another way that we can help free our kids up. And part of the, that conversation as well is letting them know that we've also equipped the adults with the information they need. So then they don't have to feel responsible to step in and help the sibling. They don't have to feel responsible when they're looking across the room and they're cringing because sibling is doing something that is, uncomfortable to them.
Right.
They can be freed from that, and they can just be a kid in those settings, because that's really what they need.
Okay, so for those who aren't familiar with trauma, they might go, what do you mean the kid was all over their leader? And tell me about those behaviors and what the underlying need is in those behaviors.
Yeah, well, this child in particular, it may or may not be trauma, because there are some other challenges that make it a little bit different for them.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as trauma, there could be a variety of things. It could be that, I have a disconnect in attachment. It could be that I need this, healthy physical touch, but I don't know how to ask for it. I mean, we could make guessing games about kiddos for a variety of different reasons, like why that might be happening. And of course, we want to set healthy boundaries, right?
Right.
I'm not at all suggesting by that, oh yeah, let kids do whatever. Not at all saying that. But if we know that, okay, this kiddo is being like way more clingy than usual. Oh, but I understand that this is their background. Maybe they've gone from home to home, or maybe they just changed homes, or maybe, I don't know what the background is for this particular child, or what their week has been like, or if they had a visit with parents. And so a lot of grace in that. But again, healthy boundaries is always a good thing. You definitely want to make sure you have those, but coupled with that understanding of why things are the way that they are. Yeah.
As we continue this conversation, I want to let you know my new book, Boundless Hope, is available now. If you're looking for more resources, strategies, and encouragement to assure every child feels like they belong, this book is for you. Visit kimbotto.com or Amazon to order your copy today. I want to go back to something you said earlier. You were talking about how churches get it right. And one is just having an awareness of foster care and what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And there are definitely misconceptions. A lot of people think foster care is a step to adoption. So what would you, if you're a church leader and you want to, and you've got some foster kids, kids from foster care, they're going to be coming to your church. What are important information that our church should know just about foster care?
Okay, I was going to say like church as a whole kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, this is, I'm going a little into the mistakes again, so I'll swing back around. But I think a mistake we make sometimes is only bringing up foster care on, like, let's say, Stand Sunday or something like that.
Yeah.
And I've seen that way too often. If it is mentioned, it's only mentioned on these, like, 2 Sundays a year. And so not just talking about it on 2 Sundays a year, but maybe we're handing out information. Maybe we're having a different people will feel differently about this, but maybe we're inviting an agency or a couple agencies to come and be in our foyer or our lobby. I don't know what the in term is now for that area of our church. But inviting them to come and not just on those particular Sundays, but making it so that is something that we want our people in our church to know about. And then we can also, maybe we can have a professional come in and just do an information. I know my church does lots of different like education discipleship type class things. So why can't we do one on trauma? And can we bring in a professional to help bring our faith and our understanding of trauma together? And so that our people, those who are interested in hearing more, can just know more about that. And so there are lots of ways that we can just our general people in the church, tell them more about foster care without trying to convince them that they need to foster or they need to adopt. And then also, too, providing the opportunities, though, if we do have families who are fostering, can we help them to understand trauma, but then also maybe to provide respite? Or can we get a group of people who are meals people? Or can we get a group of people who are gifts people? Or whatever it might be, so that they can they can have a little bit of understanding without having people feel like they need to jump all the way in. Because I do think we do that a lot, too, where, well,
yes,
caring for the widows and orphans is something we need to do, so go do it, instead of realizing that it takes a village, and if everybody is doing all of the same thing, there's nobody left to support everybody else. And so we need the wraparound people. And so how can we give our people easy opportunities to understand trauma, understand foster care, but then step in and tiptoe, right? Dip their toes in to help everyone else.
Right. And studies show that often the foster parents, when they decide they can't or aren't going to do it anymore, it's due to lack of support.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing how mowing somebody's lawn, dropping off a kid's roll, driving another kid to baseball practice can help.
Mm-hmm.
I recently saw that you post about the importance of one-on-one time with your kids. You have 6 children living in your house. How do you carve out that one-on-one time, and why is it such a priority to you?
Yeah. Well, the reason it's priority to me is kind of twofold. One, my love language is quality time. So I kind of need it. Actually, maybe it's threefold. And then we know connection, right? We need connection for correction and attachment and all those kinds of things. So that's another one. But also, we know based on research of BioKids that it's actually significant. Dr. Jana Hunsley, who did research on BioKids, looked at what they're called predictive factors. And so, like, that's these things, these measures that this is going to make a difference on how BioKids see themselves or how they view their experience. And one of those showed up as quality time, as individual time, one-on-one time. So that's why it's important to me, those kind of 3 things. And so, yeah, it does get complicated. So for my kids, sometimes I'll get creative with doing stuff in-house. So I will say, hey, kiddo, do you want to come make dinner with me? Or, hey, let's go do the garden outside. That's only maybe me and one kid who do the garden. And so there's these like little things that I'll invite them into that are just day to day, or even my kids are at camp this week. And so I've got my littlest home. And so we went to the pool right before I got on here and talked to you. And so there's these I use the pockets of time and I try to use them well. But then I recently also went to like a Broadway musical in my area with one of my kids who loves music, and they needed a one-on-one time. So we just make it happen where we can. That does not mean, like, I am not taking my kids out and spending a bunch of money every time. That was a special thing. Mostly it's the day-to-day. This kid is playing by themselves with that toy. I'm going to go play with them, or I'm going to ask that kid if they want to play a board game with me or play Uno with me. And so that's more how one-on-one time looks in my family with my kids.
Yes, it's great. Thank you. What is the thing that you really want us to know? How would you like to encourage our listeners as they interact with families who have kiddos who came into their home biologically as well as other ways?
Yeah, well, one thing that I like to talk with parents about when I'm talking in the faith setting.
Yes.
And I know that we're not just talking to parents here, but I like to remind parents that God can use this, right? He can use the hard parts and the positive parts. It can be a mix of all different things, and they can all still be used. But then I have this responsibility as a parent to steward well what he's given me. And so that includes the kids who are already in my home and the resources and the availability I have to help with other kids. And so helping parents to understand that, I think, is good. But it's also good for our faith community leaders, our people in our churches, to know too that it is this push pull, and there can be these really positive things. Like, we can feel the Lord with us. We know from research that faith is a healthy coping strategy. Someone's faith can actually increase their ability to cope with hard things. And so those are great things that we can hopefully be reminding parents of as well, and encouraging them in, because so often, too often, we separate these things. It's either we're going to just pray about it and quote scripture, or we're going to go to a therapist and we're going to do the mental health thing. And why do we so often not have these things together?
Right.
If we are people of faith, they ought to be together. And so as church leaders, knowing that we can come alongside them by knowing professionals, we can have the education on trauma, all those things, but we can't then leave the faith component either. We have to support them all the way around. And so that would be my final kind of, this is what I want people to know, is that the faith component cannot be left alone. It is so integral. It's probably a big reason why our people chose to step into foster care adoption in the first place.
Right.
And so it's going to continue to be a thread. And so how can we help make sense of that along the journey for them too, and for their kids? And another thing that I've been thinking of, because partially for my own kids, but also for my own experience, when I was growing up, I recently found a journal that I had written in after the first set of kids had left our home. And in that journal, I wrote, "It's been a year. It's been really hard. I know what it's like to lose somebody, but God is with me and he'll never leave me." And I wrote that at, 11 years old?
Wow.
And for me to look back, and it does echo a lot of my experiences right now as a parent of this, I feel so alone sometimes, but the only reason I'm getting through this is because of the Lord. And so I know what that's like as a bio kid, to have the foundation of faith that is carrying me through the hardest of those times. But then my own kids, I will find them singing a song. There's one, it's an old one by Steve Green. Don't judge for the fact that we still sing it around here. But it's from a song, "When I am afraid, I will trust in you, and God whose word I praise." And so my kids, when they've had a sibling has had a really scary incident, I will find them singing that, or when it's been a hard day. And so they're using these tools that we've given them to cope with the hard things. And so we can't leave faith outside of that, because it can help our kids to cope through the hardest stuff in our changing families.
Right. What about your kids who are coming into your family that have no faith background at all? And actually, maybe they do have some background, but it's negative.
Right.
And their connotation of God is negative.
Right.
How do you navigate that?
Yeah, well, you definitely want to be very gentle. You're not going to force them to participate in, those things. Obviously, if the family's going to church, it's reasonable to ask them to come with you to church. And, you're going to figure out what's appropriate, what's comfortable for this child. You're going to talk to caseworkers if there's other factors at play. But overall, you're not going to force a kiddo to participate. You're going to invite them. You're going to make it an inviting space. Hey, we're going to read a story together, or hey, we're going to sing this song together, or whatever it might be. Would you like to join us? And if they don't, we're not shaming them for that.
Right.
Right. When they'd like to participate, they'll participate. But also, for example, something that I do, and this is, again, my kids are bio and adopted, but when it's bedtime, we pray for them, and we sing a song for them. Even my 11-year-old and my 10-year-old, they still get the same song sung to. We've sung it for 8 years now, and they haven't yet told us to stop. So we'll see when they get too old.
What song is it? The song you mentioned earlier, or what song is it?
No. It's "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star," but it's a variation.
Okay.
It's "What a wonderful child you are, big bright eyes, nice round cheeks, talented girl or boy who's kind and sweet." And so that's what we sing to them every night at bedtime.
I've never heard that.
Yeah. It's from Becky A. Bailey's "I Love You" rituals. If you look up that on YouTube.
Okay, I'm looking it up.
Yeah, if you look it up on YouTube, the video is really sweet, because they show kids doing it with each other, but then the very end they show a parent, or an adult child doing it with their elderly parent. Oh man, waterworks.
Yeah.
So we sing that to our kids every night. But what I also do is I will pray a verse over them. So I might say something like, "Now may the God of peace himself sanctify you completely, and may your whole spirit and soul and body be kept blameless." So I might do something like that, or "Lord bless you and keep you." And so those are ways that I can still use my faith to bless my children, whether or not they're like, "Yes, I'm following Jesus. He's king of my life," right? They don't have to make that declaration for me to incorporate it into my parenting,
right,
and to how I choose to show up for them. and how I choose to model my faith and how that sustains me during hard times. All of that can still be happening when a kid comes into my home and either has a bad experience of faith or has no faith at all. All of that can still be happening with that present.
What other routines do you have that help instill faith in all the kids and grow?
Yeah.
In all the kids in your home?
Yeah. Well, this is like probably honestly, one of my favorite things to actually talk about. You'd think it's bio kids, but I actually love.
Oh, good.
I love Bible teaching. I love child discipleship. Like, I love all those things. This is actually insider information, Kim. So you can leave it in or you can take it out. But I have another children's book that's coming out in November, and it is not about social work at all. It's about a story. It's a story about Jesus. And so, anyway, so it's a big passion for me. I
can't wait.
Yeah, it's not just in the foster care realm. Anyway, so another routine that we have in that spiritual and the faith realm is in the morning, we will do, there's like these tiny theologians. I don't know if you've heard of it. They have like these little, they have all these little things. So we get a lot of the cards, like ABC cards or whatever it might be. And we go over those. So my kids are currently learning the word sanctification and grace and mercy and what are the difference in those things. And so we do that. Now, we haven't only done those. We've done the more basic things. My kids are just getting a little older now, but we learned the Apostles' Creed. They have cards for those. So we went, and so my kids can say the Apostles' Creed, and we'll read a Bible story together. And those are things we do usually in the morning before school. And I think that's really great because it sets the tone for their day.
Absolutely.
As well. And then we'll do at dinner time, this isn't particularly faith related, but I think it is because that's always how we use to describe it. But we'll do, like, we have a book that we have at our table, and we'll ask everybody what they're thankful for that day. And when they get stuck on, I don't know, food, and they say food every day, okay, well, think of all the things God has given you. What could be something else? And so that's still our frame of reference. It may not be a strictly, teaching time of God in the Bible, but we are providing another opportunity for them, their faith to expand on how is God providing for you in a variety of different ways. So those are some of the things I can think of. I did JBQ growing up. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's an Assemblies of God thing.
No, I'm not.
Junior Bible quiz. So I have an old book. From when I did it. And so my kids will sometimes ask, can we do the purple book? They just want to do like Bible fact questions. Like, who is the oldest person in the Bible? How long did they live? Like, they want to know these facts. So just fun stuff like that too. Making it fun for kids. They enjoy it. My kids have rarely, if ever, said, no, I don't want to do that. Because it's fun. They enjoy it. It's part of who our family is. It's part of our family's routine.
Well, and as we talk about how you make a kid feel like they belong, routines help them feel like they belong, having unique
100%.
Family traditions. So we need to get you back on, just do a whole session on how we instill. No, because I love talking about this stuff because sometimes we make it too complicated. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's just revising the words to Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star and doing it every single night.
Yeah.
Or praying a verse over. That's so good. Well, Daniela, it's so great to have you on. We always end with some rapid fire questions. And I know, especially adoptive and foster mamas and parents are really good at this because they're good at thinking on their feet. So here we go. What's your favorite thing to do in your free time?
Read or crochet.
Okay. So you said read. Mm-hmm. I don't crochet. My daughter does. But you said read. What's your favorite book that you want everybody to read?
Oh, man. This year, my most recent favorite book is a book by Matthew Bates, which is called Gospel Allegiance. Okay. It's been an amazing book. I talk about it all of the time currently. Okay. So that would be last year I read like 50 something books, and this year I'm on like book 36. So it's a little hard to say my favorite book ever, but that's my most favorite recent book.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
What do you wish more people knew about you?
That's a good one. I don't know if I'm as good at rapid fire about that. Well, I guess in the space that I live in kind of the social media realm, I wish more people knew that foster care, adoption, and bio kids is not all that I am.
Yes.
I am so much bigger of a person than that, but it's hard because we know you kind of have to show up in a certain space a certain way. But I am so much more than talking about bio kids. Like I said to you, like, my faith in Jesus is the most important thing to know about me. And yet in my professional space, I don't really get to talk about it much because I try to make it so that everyone can hear. And so I know that that sometimes if it's heavily in my faith, that sometimes that makes it so that other people can't hear it. So I really I want people to know that there's so much more about me and my life. And I do parent kids from a hard, difficult background. And even though I may not talk about it a lot, that's a very real part of my life. And my family is a part of my life. And we are connected to extended family. Like, I have so much more about me than just how I show up on social media.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do. You know what, Daniela? Well, you have to do it. I would love to hear more. I mean, I've talked to you personally about it, but yeah. I'll be praying for you as you discern how to incorporate that in who you are.
Yeah.
In the public.
I appreciate that.
What's your favorite family tradition?
If we're talking like growing up, then a lot of our traditions center around like holidays. So we have like traditions around Christmas that I enjoy. So one of them that we do, and it incorporates my kids now. I'll give you two examples. So one that we did growing up that we incorporate my kids now is before we open presents on Christmas, we watch, I don't know if you're familiar with Nest Family Videos, but they're cartoons, lots of stories. And so I grew up watching those. And so we watch, it's called A King is Born. And it's the cartoon of Jesus being born. It's like 25 minutes, but we have to watch that before we open presents. We're not allowed to open presents until we've done that. And so we've watched it, 30 plus times now, and so we're all quoting it. And it's really just a fun time and a great tradition. So that's as far as that goes. And as far as like now with my kids, something we just recently started, and I think it will quickly become a favorite, is when our kids turn 10, we take them on a mini trip.
Yeah.
So in February, I took my newly turned 10-year-old to just a day at Disneyland. I used points to buy our plane tickets. We went on the cheapest day of the year, the day before they turned 10, so the tickets were a little bit cheaper. So did all the cost, aware things. And she had a great time. It was amazing. She loved it. She talks about it. And so what a fun memory. And so I think that's a fun tradition that it'll become a favorite if it's not already kind of a favorite.
That is a fun tradition. Okay, this is the last one. Finish this thought. Every child.
Okay. Every child should be seen.
Yes, I agree. And you've given us all kinds of ideas today to help every child feel seen and known, whether they be a bio kid, a foster kid, or just a human.
Yeah.
Any kind of human.
Right.
So thank you so much. So for people who would like to learn more about the work that you do, what is a good way to get in touch with you and where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm most active on Instagram. So with_siblings is my bio kid one. I also do have a more general public one where I do speak a lot about my faith. And so that's Daniela.coates. That's on Instagram as well. But I've got websites for both of kind of those too. So that's the best place to find me. But you can also find me on Facebook. There just aren't as many. I feel like I'm not as involved over there, but yeah, I'm there too.
And I will say on Instagram, you really encourage me through what you post. And so you keep on doing what you're doing. And also, don't forget, Daniela, your book, that beautiful children's book, The Day Lily Turned Uninvisible. It gives such great insight into the life of a kid who has siblings coming into their family in a whole bunch of different ways.
Thank you. Yeah, it can be found on Amazon. That's where you can get like ebook, paperback, hardcover. But then hardcover is available a lot of different places too. But Amazon's frankly the easiest place to go.
Daniela, it's always great to spend time with you. Thank you so much for being on.
Thanks, Kim.
Thank you so much for joining me today on Every Child Belongs. If you found today's episode helpful, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. And don't forget to share this with a friend who might need to hear it. Together, we can create a world where every child belongs.